Hello everyone, welcome to the workshop on how to be a good chair. What I'm gonna do in this video is I'm gonna explain to you what you need to do as a chair to just, be good and how you can improve. I will give you some tips along the way about, the things that I'm going to talk about. So these are going to be how to manage the debate, how to manage the deliberation time, how to make sure that you stay within those 15 minutes so that you have the time management. I'm also going to talk to you about how you can give a good oral adjudication. And lastly, I'm going to talk about giving and getting good feedback. So as you might have noticed, these are already quite a lot of things that you as a chair need to do. So I won't be able to go into extreme detail on how to do everything, sort of these things correctly, or just give you a lot of tips or a lot of examples. So I will, give you a lot of overview here. I will just give you some tips and tricks, but there will also be some videos where I'll go into a bit more depth, for example, panel management and time management. So if you have something that you also want to be discussed more, put it in the comments, then I will try to make a video about that. Let's just immediately jump into it. So how do you manage debate? I think before we start about how you manage debate, it's important to highlight what the goals are of you as a chair when you are managing debate. I think firstly, you should, notice that there is a social aspect to debating. So people talk to each other during debate, after debate, and you should make sure this happens, nicely and correctly. So this means that people have respect for your wings, or this means that people respect each other pronouns preference, all of this stuff. So everything that has to do with the social dynamics, you as a chair have an important role to make sure that that happens well. I think this is sometimes forgotten by chairs. Secondly, you provide a structure for debate. So you make it clear for debaters what they can expect. Can they expect a timer to go off on the first minute to denote that they can, offer and take POIs, or is there going to be a slap, or is there going to be nothing at all? Lastly, what you need to do is you need to keep order. So something random might happen, or some teams might be disruptive, and you as a chair should make sure that either it doesn't happen, or when it does happen, it doesn't, distract from the debate too much. Now, how do you do it? I think this already just starts with the introduction. So, of course, you start with introducing yourself and preferred pronouns if you wish to disclose them. And then you allow the panelists to do the same. I'm going to give you two tips here. The first thing is already hype up your panelist. I think this is not only just nice and respectful to your panelists, but I also think this just increases interaction after debate where speakers are more likely to also ask for feedback from the panelist. And because again, a lot of panelists just know stuff or just have good tips that they can give. I think this is overall a good thing to do. So this can be like, oh, I have amazing panelists with me, or I'm judging this debate with really good judges, and then you can allow them to introduce themselves. And I think this is just a nice thing to do. Second thing is a bit more of a equity note, I guess. At the moment, you don't want to disclose your pronouns. That is completely fine. But then do explicitly state that the panelists can introduce themselves and their pronouns if they wish to disclose them, because sometimes panelists might feel like that they can't, or that they shouldn't because you as a chair are not doing it. So I think that's just a nice thing to do. The second thing is you allow teams to introduce themselves. And this would be names, speaker orders, preferred pronouns, if they also want to disclose that. And here I'm going to also give you another tip immediately. Already make sure that all the panelists who are going to need to fill in a ballot already have their ballot ready and just submit the names for the speakers. So that during deliberation time, you're not discussing who was prime minister and who was deputy prime minister. This just eats away your time unnecessarily. And then lastly, in the introduction, after everyone has introduced themselves, you can just highlight the rules or things that you just think are important, or you can discuss some practical matters. So it might be that the room is a bit echoey, which means you don't want people to start talking loudly during the debate or whisper loudly. So you can just make a general note of that the people should be careful of that. Another thing is maybe you really think that POIs are very important. If that is the case, there's an opportune time before people start speaking to say, hey, I really think that POIs are important. I will punish you for not offering and taking POIs, and therefore you should offer and take them. Another thing here is that maybe during the tournament, people have just really long POIs, which go over 15 seconds. And then you can just also highlight this like, hey, I want to note that POIs are only allowed to be 15 seconds long at most. And if a person cuts you off, you need to sit down. Those kinds of things. So if you notice something or you want to make sure that something happens in the debate, you as a chair have the power to do so. I also recommend doing this and doing this wisely. Okay. What are you then going to do during the debate? I think even if you're going to delegate tasks, you as a chair still need to make sure that those tasks are performed well. So even if you're not going to be timekeeping yourself, if your panelist is going to, time keep or keep track of POIs, then you still make sure that, you check the timer from time to time to make sure that you don't accidentally allow some speakers to speak for longer and therefore have more material that is credited. So yeah, that's important. Even if you delegate, still check. Okay, let's say you have some disruptions. Overall, I think the best thing to do is to just act quickly, act decisively, and just have a short action. So if people are speaking too loud, then you should shush them. And I want to note that even if you think it's not distracting, other people in debate, such as speakers or just wings and panelists, feel like it might be too loud, and therefore they can't concentrate. So even if it might not be distracting for you, but you know that it might be for other people, you can also still shush them, and I also think you should shush them to make sure that everyone has equal access to debate. A second thing is, people ask POIs during protected time, or the POI is too long. I think then just a short sentence of out of order or just order already oftentimes makes people quiet down, and then you can make a announcement after the speech to say, hey, you have 50 seconds, or if a person cuts you off, you need to stop talking to make sure that other speakers will respect the rules. There are very rare occasions in which you actually need to pause the timer. So this can be that maybe the room that you're in is very hot, so you've opened a window, but it has allowed wind to come in, and then that basically meant that the papers on top of the table in front of the speaker, fell off the table, and now the speaker needs to gather them. Again, it's important to act quickly and decisively. So you say, okay, we're going to stop the timer now. So that means that the speaker knows, okay, I just can stop talking and I can just take my papers. And then what you then also do is then, okay, take the papers, take like 5 seconds to breathe. The last thing I heard was this, your timer is, or we pause the timer at this time slot. Again, just communicate explicitly what you're going to do, what happened, where you tracked, and where you when you stopped. And I think this is important, not only just because of that specific event that happened, but maybe in that same debate, like in the back of the room, a chair like falls off the table, and you feel like, okay, it has fallen, but I don't think it will fall again or it will make sound again. So we just need to continue the debate. If you then don't do something, then the speakers already know that you're not going to pause the timer. So then they already know what they can expect to. So it's important when you have disruptions to act just quickly and, decisively. Okay. There's also a policy with delays. So it might be that a team or, panelist is too late for debate. The important thing is to just contact Orgcom in some way, either via volunteers that are outside or via the Discord channel, or just messaging them on Messenger. And then what you then do is then you start the introductions, and then after those introductions, you decide maybe to wait a bit longer, or you just start the debate, or you just ask for a swing team very quickly from one of the volunteers who might be waiting outside. There are different norms and different rules that tournaments have. So I think it's important that if you're going to judge, that you're going to read upon them. But overall, the idea is that, after introductions, you can maybe wait half a minute to 2 minutes to just give the opportunity for teams to or wings to come to the room. But again, it is their responsibility to be there on time. And if you've already done introductions, it might already be quite some time they've gone. If they got 20 minutes to do, get to the room, that should have been plenty of time. Like they've had the talk. It's their responsibility to make sure they know where they need to go to. So yeah, just you can start that point if you just have a if you have for a team, for example, a swing team coming in, or for panelists, you just start without the panelist. So that is just how you manage the debate. Now, deliberation time. What is the goal for you as a chair? So I think there are 3 things that are going to push you and pull you in different directions. The first thing is you need to come to a conclusion. And I want to note that the important thing is that it is a conclusion. It is not a unanimous conclusion. And I think there are a couple of reasons why it's the case. I think, one, sometimes it's just not feasible within 15 minutes for people who have diametrically opposed opinions to suddenly converge on one opinion. Like, I think it's very unlikely it's always going to happen, but I also think oftentimes it's just very fair for it not to happen. There are oftentimes cases where the judge needs to insert themselves and then need to assess if they believe something or not believe something, because something is either not proven or not reacted to. So this can be like maybe closing government has an extension, but it's extremely derivative, but it at least adds some reasons why something is true. And closing opposition has a really wild case, which you don't believe is actually true, but they do impact that it is very important. Then the question as a judge is, do we think it's more important that we have a case that is proving a bit more why it is true, or that we have a case which you think is unlikely but has a big impact? If none of the teams explicitly weigh this, then you as a judge need to insert yourself, and judges fairly can have different ideas of what is more important, and therefore it is fine for judges to then not come to unanimous call, because again, this is where subjectivity sometimes bleeds into debate. If people just don't do clear weighing enough, if they're not explicit enough, if you as the judge now need to decide what is true or what is important. So it is absolutely fair to actually not come to unanimous decision. And sometimes I think that's even good because it shows how close comparisons are. So you should come to a conclusion, but not necessarily a unanimous conclusion as a chair. Secondly, you should give the opportunity for everyone to have their say. There might be cases where you feel like the panelist is not that good. Maybe they didn't track the debate well. Maybe you believe that their contributions are just weird and you don't understand them. Look, these panelists are still people, so they deserve respect. But beyond that, I also want to know that they offered their time, effort, and sometimes money to be at a competition. So the least thing that you can do is still put them in the discussion, like allow them to have their say, even if you don't think it is important. I think this is also a skill that not all chairs always have, and that's to say, allow people to talk during the deliberation and make sure everyone has had the opportunity to talk and has had their say. And this is the last thing. You need to be on time. You have 15 minutes to actually come to a call, submit the ballot, agree on speaks, have discussed all comparisons, and there's just a lot of things that you need to do within 15 minutes. So it might be the case that, you might not have everyone's opinion on one clash because you need to be on time. So that is why, you might have attention there. But also, if you spend maybe a bit more time, you could come to a clearer conclusion or just like a quicker conclusion. But that means that you might not spend time on other clashes as well. And that means that you might get delayed, all of this stuff. So that's why you are basically being pushed in these three directions. And I think a good chair is able to understand these are the three responsibilities and make sure all of them happen. Okay, how do you then go into deliberation time? I think at start, you just give people time and just give explicit time slots. So be like, okay, let's just think for 1 or 2 minutes, and just gather what you think is an initial call. I think what you can also oftentimes say is it doesn't need to be a complete call, because I think this just means that it is easier for you to start discussion. And I think sometimes also not that useful to have a person think longer about a clash if they're going to be convinced or they're going to come to a better or a quicker decision if you're just talking about it and you just make sure that you both all agree on, for example, what a team has even proven or has even stated in the first place. So that is a thing that you start with. Then at that time, you're going to organize your own thoughts. Oftentimes, at the moment, if you're a good judge and you have, already judged a lot, you're going to already have an initial call, either completely or you just need only a little bit of time. If you need that extra time to actually come to an initial call, that's completely fine. Take that time to just come to initial call. If you already have that initial call, then that extra time that you have can be spent on what do I think the closest clashes are? What do I think is maybe the most contentious thing in debate? And how am I going to make sure that I ask these questions and what do I want to have discussed at least? So if you feel like closing government clearly takes a fourth because you think that they are derivative and they don't really prove anything new, then you might already think that they might use a lot of fancy words, but these fancy words are just words that were already in opening government, but then in different ways. So you might say, I think they're very derivative, and for me it's very clear, but maybe not for everyone. So you can understand that might be contentious. So then you might say, what specific question am I going to ask when I'm going to wonder if we're going to discuss gov bench? Okay. When you've had the time, so it's the first 2 minutes, that's when you ask people initial calls, and that's what you write down. So where do people agree? What is the most contentious thing? Or just where can people be convinced? All that kind of stuff, you just write it down, and then you keep it oversight, and then you think, okay, what does everyone have? Where do they agree? Where do they disagree? Okay, I'm gonna give you already a couple of tips for panel management. So for panel management, I think there are over 3 things I want to say. First, just like how you give explicit time slots at the beginning, I think it might be very good when you're going to ask, what do you think, who wins opening half, to already give a time slot. Be like, okay, can you explain to me why you think opening government beats opening opposition within 2 minutes? I think just time slot makes it easier for people to stop talking when it is 2 minutes, because they know, oh, it's 2 minutes. I need to round up. I'm not gonna talk about these things in detail because I don't have the time. But also, they allow themselves to be cut off more easily because you've given them the time slot. They know the time slot. So, there's like a rule here that they've broken. So they're fine with you cutting them off. Whereas, you don't give that rule, then they might want to finish their point and they're more likely to continue talking, even if you start to cut them off. If you are trying to, manage the debate and you're going to want to give an opinion or want to react, but someone immediately reacts to you or starts talking over you or wants to add something and that kind of stuff, the best thing to do is to just continue talking. Because at some point, the person understands that they're not getting through, that you're not stopping. They can't make their points. No one's going to understand what they're saying. And this is going to be something that's a bit difficult to do at the beginning, if this is the first time that you're doing it. But just start talking. Even if you just start repeating the same sentence over and over again, or you're saying, as the chair, I think I should be saying this, 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 and this. And you just start, rambling a bit. I think that at that point, you need to just continue talking, because otherwise these people are just going to talk over you and you're unable to really manage the panel. Another thing that might just be very good is just say, okay, I know you want to react, but off to this. Or you can say, look, we only have got that much time. We need to move on. Just, make it clear to them that they have the opportunity to talk, but also make it clear that, there is a time limit that we all need to deal with. Another fun way to do it is by pointing at the timer or just looking at the timer very clearly when you feel like a person is going on for too long, because then they feel that pressure and they feel like, I need to, stop talking so long. So these are just some tips for panel management. We're then going to do the discussion. I think it's important to kind of have before we discuss how you can do deliberation. So how would you then structure the deliberation? This is a kind of personal subjective flavor here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just explain how I do it and why I do it the way, because for me, I think this is the most organized and the most intuitive way. There are some other ways where people discuss, for example, first to fourth, and that works for them. It doesn't really work for me, so I'm not going to give you an explanation how to do it because I don't know how to do it because it's too confusing for me. So how do you then structure the deliberation? I would say chronologically. I think this makes sense because most people, understand and remember debate chronologically, but also it just creates a lot of clarity. So what might happen is when you just discuss CG first, if CG has a case that is really similar to OG, you need to discuss OG and CG, how it's new, because you need to know what you get credit from CG. But if, for example, you have opening opposition second for some reason, then you want to maybe discuss CG OO first. But that means that because you're now discussing first gov bench, but then doing that when you're also actually basically discussing opening opposition, it becomes a really big mess where it becomes a bit unclear how you would go through it. Because you're now discussing three teams, you're just discussing different clashes, and it just becomes really hard. So just go chronologically, then you know what people have stated, then discussing closing halves becomes just easier. So then you do chronologically OG, then versus OO. Then you do also a team-by-team comparison. So then you discuss closing government, and then you just only discuss closing government with respect to opening government. So this is a team-by-team. So you don't say, they might have, this weighing against opening opposition, which is, what beats them over opening opposition. That doesn't matter because you're only discussing opening government versus closing government in this case. And I think, again, this is also necessary because if you want to discuss closing government against opening opposition, like I said before, you need to know what you get credit from closing government to weigh over opening opposition. That's why you also do benches first and then you do diagonals. Same for closing opposition. Closing opposition, you only discuss closing opposition against opening opposition first. Then you do closing opposition against opening government and then maybe to closing government. Yeah, so that's what I think overall is the most intuitive way to structure the deliberation. Now I'm going to give you an example. So this is the example that I just made up. I am judging here. I have OG first, CO second, OO third, and CG fourth. Now with me, I have the panelists John and Clara. And the way I would ask questions is, again, we would start chronologically, so we'd start opening half first. Well, I noticed that Clara has here the minority opinion. So what I would say is, okay, Clara, you have the minority opinion. Here, why do you think that opening opposition beats opening government? Then, if there are even more people, so let's say we now have a fourth person, and that person would be a trainee and would have the same opinion as Clara, then I would ask the trainee first. Why would I ask the trainee first? I think it is just easier for a trainee to just give a reasoning for why they believe one team beats over another, compared to them having to think what their own opinion is. Then what does the other person say? How do I relate to it? How do I add to it? What is the exact thing that they're talking about? Do I agree mindly, or do I think I'm talking about different clash and that kind of stuff? I'm not saying it's impossible to do, but it's just that thing that oftentimes trainees struggle with. So you want to make sure you give them the best opportunity to present themselves, but also it is just the best for time-wise. You make sure that they don't take too long to then come up with a reaction, for example. Now, so okay, you do the trainee first, and after you've given that opportunity to the trainee, I would say, ask Clara, do you agree with this? Do you want to add on this? And then, Clara also has her say, and then I would give the opportunity for John to then respond to this because John disagrees. Then we would ask, okay, John has given this reasoning. Clara, are you convinced? Say Clara says most likely maybe no. If she says no, then I might introduce myself here to maybe give stronger reasoning than what John has, or maybe different reasoning than John has to why I think OG beats O. And then after I can ask Clara if she's convinced. And if she's convinced, then we go on because everyone agrees now on the opening half in that context. Now, what kind of question should you then ask? I think the first kind of like questions that are just nice for opening half and like closing half is just, why do you think that OO beats OG, for example? Then when you're talking about benches, I think that you can either ask immediately, why do you think CG beats OG or OG beats CG, when they have completely different cases, right? So if they're talking about, different stuff, so one team has a thing about like media narratives, and the other one just has stuff about political parties, and that these are just very clearly different arguments, then you can be like, okay, why do you think this argument beats that argument? But sometimes they're talking about the same thing. So maybe someone is talking about like media backlash, and the other ones are talking about like social media backlash. So you might know that these arguments look maybe a bit similar, and then you're like, okay, we need to distinguish CG from OG first. So if that's the case, then you ask the question, what do you think CG's extension is over OG? And after that, then you ask, okay, now that we've all agreed on what CG brings new, how do you think this way gets opening government? I think that's a cleaner way, because sometimes when you're like asking why another team beats another team, and you first need to discuss what is like in detail what it is that the team brings, and like we can create in the first place, it becomes a bit messy, and you're kind of like having again 2 to 3 discussions at the same time, because you're then deciding first, the clash, what does CG bring? And then the clash is the thing that is brought more important, which are 2 things to discuss at the same time. You should always try to discuss one thing at a time in a discussion, because it's the easiest to handle. Okay. And then lastly, when you have things such as diagonals, another thing that you can just always ask is, what is the explicit weighing or rebuttal from this closing team to the opening team? What was their PY engagement? All of this stuff, which can also be done after you ask, how do you think this beats, or before it, so that you know what's actually stated by these people, and that you're not inserting yourself. You think, I just think this argument is more important. Like, okay, you think it might be important, but if it isn't explained why it is more important in your specific way, maybe you shouldn't then credit this weighing necessarily towards the closing team. So these are the kind of questions that you can ask during deliberation time. Now, when do you insert yourselves? I think I already in the example highlight this a bit. If you're the only one who disagrees, I think then you, of course, because you need to have someone like pushes back. So you need to be like, okay, I'm going to be the one who pushes back. The second thing is, if you just want to have a quick response. So again, you might be short on time, and you just want to be like, okay, you say that closing government says this. I just think that you absolutely misinterpret what they're saying, or I think this is an opening government's specifically in this specific speech. If there's something just you want to have a quick response that just clears up a lot of things, that is when you do it just for time management's sake. Another thing is, maybe after you've agreed, right? So let's say we've convinced Clara, we've convinced that OO beats OG. Then I might want to highlight, we agreed that OG beats OO. I might want to highlight that opening opposition has maybe some novel principle, which is not completely explained, but maybe intuitive. And that might be something that I think is important for like closing government, or so at least something that we can credit, just to make clear that we do still credit something from opening opposition. Or we want to do it with speaks. We're like, the leader of opposition has at least this principle, which I think is something that kind of stands. So we should credit that when we're thinking of speaks. That that makes the later comparisons a bit easier because you make sure that everyone has already agreed, and then you just highlight something, and then they can think about it. And then when you're discussing, for example, speaks, when you're discussing closing government compared to opening opposition, you can come back on what you've already said, and people have had their thoughts about it. Another thing that's important is summarizing. And I don't see a lot of chairs doing this enough. So you might have a very long discussion. Someone might have like 2 minutes of like full analysis why one team beats another team. And they might bring a lot of points, or they might point out a lot of things. You as the chair have the unique opportunity to lead the debate. And I think a good way to do it is by summarizing what that person said. So you can say, just for me to understand, or just to create this clarity, you think that opening opposition beats opening government because their rebuttal was better. You think there's overall more intuitive arguments, and you think the weighing for the impact was good. And then you say, and then the person says, yeah, that is overall what I'm saying. And they say, okay, let's discuss the first thing first. The first thing first, which we think is rebuttal. Do you think this rebuttal is good? Now you only discuss that one thing. Because if you think that might be the deciding factor for who wins opening half, the other clashes you can kind of like mitigate or can like fall away. Or you can already convince the other person of the other clash when you've convinced them of the first clash, because you can point out to a specific material of what a person says. So to create a clean discussion and also effective discussion, it is useful to just highlight what people have said, summarize them, and then steer the discussion by saying we're only going to discuss this first, and then we can discuss the other parts. I think this is overall an effective way because, again, if you then have again another person responding with like 2 responses to each clash and that kind of stuff, it becomes again like a mini debate in of itself, and it becomes very hard to just do and then also stay within time. So summarize and then lead the discussion to something productive. Now you want to also come to a conclusion. So it might be the case that we're talking about opening half, and Clara is still not convinced after I've had my say. What I can then say is, okay, you're not convinced. What would you need to hear to be flipped? So it might be the case they're like, I need to hear where in opening government there is a response or rebuttal to opening opposition saying this. This then allows us to just, set a benchmark for what we need to do. Then we can look through our notes. We can say, this is what that person says in this speech. This is roughly the time stamp that they said it. And then if Clara then still isn't convinced, they just call a vote. Because again, you have other things you also need to discuss. You can't, spend 10 minutes discussing opening half to then just have 5 minutes doing all the other like clashes and waves that you need to do. So even if you think the person is wrong and you think that if you take 2 more minutes, you can convince the person, that time is going to eat away from other clashes, and therefore also the fairness against other teams, because you also need to consider them. So that is what you should do when you want to, come to a conclusion. Okay. One last thing about inserting yourself. I think it is oftentimes very easy as a chair to try to be the one who always responds, to be the person who always just, has a response or says stuff or like gives reasoning why one team takes over another team. But I think it is not the most important thing for you to be the one talking a lot during deliberation time. Not only because there are other panelists who should also have the time to do so, but you also have an oral adjudication that's going to be 15 minutes long, in which you just can yap for 15 minutes. You can talk for 15 minutes. You can show everyone that you're a really good judge and that you're able to track all these arguments in detail and that you understand the weighing and all this stuff. So if you already believe that it is sufficiently discussed in the deliberation, don't feel pressure or don't feel the need to then also add other stuff, to then also, go even more into detail and give another reaction and this kind of stuff, because it will not be useful. Because again, you have it away. Only do it if you have a specific goal for it. So only do it if you're like, I want to make sure we have fair speaks allocations, or I want to make sure we do like closing half. We do like benches weighing fairly. So yeah, that's important. Always ask yourself, why am I interrupting this person? Why am I bringing something in the discussion? And what is the goal of that? Now, time management. What does it then, what is the goal of time management? I think this is quite intuitive. I think it's just 2 things. Firstly, You need to make sure that you stop people from talking too long and making the deliberation go on for too long. But another thing is that also gets a bit forgotten is to create a structure that feels fair. So again, it might be the case that you're going to have a lot of time management issues, that you're going to have a lot of problems with time management, and then the response that might be, I'm just going to cut off speakers when they just talk too long. But again, you should be respectful of these people. So if you're just cut them off too quickly, or too quickly or too often, it's not going to be not only not that respectful towards them, it's also not going to be good for discussion because they're not being able to voice their opinion. So they're not going to be convinced because they feel like they just have been able to explain their points well enough. So you need to find again the balance where you give people the opportunity to talk and give them time enough so that you can convince them, but also that it doesn't happen for too long and that you stay outside the 15 minutes. So how do you deal with this, especially when you have large panels? I think a lot of things is just preparing people. So before the deliberation, so before the debate or at the start of the deliberation, or even before you even enter the room, you can say to your panelist, hey, we are with like 5 people on a panel. We're going to maybe have we're trying to hurry up the debate. We're going to try to make sure the deliberation time stays for 50 minutes. So I might, be very quick when it comes to cutting you off, or might be tight on, allowing you to react or not, because we just don't have the time. Another thing is just be strict on time. So if you just have 1 or 2 panelists, you could just be very lenient. It's going to be more of a discussion if you tend to agree already a bit. But here you do need to insert yourself a bit more. You do need to have quicker responses. You need to make sure that people don't spend too long time explaining stuff. Now, what are specific tricks that I could give you for time management? I think it is giving specific time slots, as I already highlighted. Again, not only does this create a clear structure that feels fair because people know what they can expect, but also it just means that they, stay within those time slots overall. Another thing that you should just think of is don't focus on stuff that is irrelevant. So closing government, for some reason, might try to bring 5 extensions. But if you bring 5 extensions, most likely at least 3 of them are not explained to be important or to be true to a sufficient level. So you don't ask, what do you think the extensions are that CG brings? You ask, what extension from CG do you buy? This means that you don't discuss stuff which everyone believes already is irrelevant. I think this already cuts to the chase. This already makes that people are only going to discuss the things that are important. Another thing that you can do is just say, okay, can you just summarize in 2 lines what you think the strategy is for CG, or what the arguments are for CG? And then you might say, okay, do we agree that this specific argument or this specific line is not well proven? If everyone agrees, then you're going to discuss the thing that is going to be more contentious. And then you're going to be like, okay, let's take the time here then. So this is another way to make sure that you stay within time. Okay, calling a vote is also important because you're going to have a lot of times where you're going to have discussion and people are not getting convinced. And the way that you can see them not getting convinced is because they keep hammering on the same points. They keep repeating the same point. What you can do is you can respond to that. But what you can also, and you can give yourself another try. You can maybe explain it in a different way or give an example which highlights your point, or an intuition pump to kind of highlight your point. And if then again, they still are not convinced, and they keep again repeating the same point, then I think at that point you just need to cut your losses and just call a vote. Again, something that not all chairs dare to do, calling a vote, especially when there is a CA on the panel. Just do it. It's important to make sure that you give all teams equal time, equal respect, and equal discussion and that kind of stuff. So please make sure that you call a vote at the moment you just hear yourself or hear other people repeating the same points over and over again. Another thing that you can do as a chair to just do things quickly, sometimes, there are uncontroversial clashes. So in this case, it might be the case that opening government beats opening opposition. And then we all agree that or for some reason we all agree that closing government beats closing government is under opening opposition. If that's the case, then we already agree that closing government basically is not going to beat opening government, because most likely their rebuttal isn't that great. They don't have that strong of a case of this stuff. So you can give the opportunity for like a panelist to do this, but it's just very quick to be like, okay, I'm just going to do closing government against opening government myself, and then just give a like short reasoning, maybe 2 sentences, maybe like 15 seconds, which is, we all believe that closing government didn't really have a case. They had a problem proving this point or why it's important. Because of that, we believe opening government's point, which is this, which means that there's a stronger point that we stand in debate, therefore done. That means that instead of having maybe 1.5, 2 minutes where you give one person the opportunity to do this, you just do it now in 30 seconds or 15 seconds, which is just quicker and just buys you time to discuss other stuff. So do those uncontroversial clashes yourself or things that are already fixed. That already just makes it easier for yourself. Okay. Now on to the oral adjudication. What is the goal of the oral adjudication? I think the first thing is to just give the result and make it so that people, know what the result is. But the other thing is also explain the result. So make sure people are convinced. And this is oftentimes how you get like good feedback as a chair from teams, is at the moment the oral adjudication not only just gives them the results that they kind of like understand, but also gives them a understanding of the debate of where they can improve, what they did well, and all this stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some tips on how to explain this to teams in such a way that they're going to buy the result that you have. So basically become a bit more convincing, which is going to help you get good feedback. But also I think in general, it's just good because at the moment you're able to convince these teams, then most likely it's already a better way of handling an away, because you just explain in more detail or better how things happened in the debate. So how do you structure this? I think, first of all, the best thing to do is to start with general feedback. The reason for this is some people just get salty if they take like a third or fourth or even a second. And then what you can just, they're not going to listen to the feedback because, they're being salty. So you now just give teams the opportunity to improve by just, making them understand what you had problems with. But it also, what it does, it primes people for how you see the debate. So if the general feedback is, we think there should be a greater clarity on how things exactly work, so have more examples or how this exactly works. I think that at the moment you already give that as feedback, people might understand, we might have debated a bit too much into abstract, and we maybe use too many debate lingo, but not really real life words. Then they already understand why they might be positioned in a specific way. So it primes them for the specific call that you're going to give them. Then after this general feedback, you give the call, but you also highlight close comparisons and highlight splits. So the reason that you do this is, again, because this is just accurate, but also this is also a convincing thing, right? So at the moment you feel like you were almost like took a second, that is a bit like less bad than where you just took a third. So this is also, again, a convincing thing. Okay, what do you then do? So when you explain the call, you basically do two things. You summarize the cases that people had, and then you do like a comparison. So explain why one team or why one case beats another case from another team. How do you then summarize cases? So I think that especially in this like turf burning meta, where a lot of people give like a lot of different reasons, you don't bring all mechanisms, for you don't bring all reasons why something is true. The only reason why you would do it is if for some reason in this debate, people are saying either X will happen or it will not happen. So it will be diametrically opposed. It cannot be that it sometimes happens or sometimes doesn't happen. So maybe it's about like this house predicts that Donald Trump will like, win the election. And then one of the clashes is like about internal politics and of the Republican Party. And then basically one side says everyone loves Trump there, and others that everyone really hates Trump there. Like these are mutually exclusive. You can't really have them. So then you need to go into detail in the explanations that people give on why it is that people really hate Trump or really like Trump. So you need to go into detail here because this is what's going to decide a clash. That's when you go into detail. But if you don't go into detail because it's just people have different cases and they're weighing it differently, and that is reason why one team beats another team, then you don't need to go into explicit detail why or how they prove it. You just say they brought many mechanisms or they brought multiple reasons, but I will highlight like two of them, the first one and the second one, or like the strongest one, again, because of time reasons, people understand that. Another thing that's important is when you try to summarize the cases is the best way to do it is to use the material explicitly from speeches so that that they know that you listened. And it also just means for yourself that you don't insert yourself already during DOA, because it might be one of those things where you want to discuss why something might or might not actually be true, or some examples that you know in real life and that kind of stuff. But then when you're talking about it in your own words, then naturally you're also going to talk about these things. But now you're talking about things that were not in the debate. So it is just important, or it might be a useful tool to stay close to the debate by using the language and the examples that are used within the debate. Another thing that's important is most of the time, teams have done something that is useful for debate. So it might be that they have at least proven why something is true, or they gave good characterization, or they gave intuitive examples. And highlighting the strength is something that is, I think, also important. So you say, even if they don't do this, they do this well. I think this is just a thing that you need to do in the call, because it needs to represent, again, the case is fair. And, if they've done something well, then they should be represented that way in the call. But also, there's another convincing thing. So when you tell them, a person, you did this thing really good, but then you lacking in this department, or you didn't do impacting, or you didn't do that, that already makes them more willing to listen to you when you're going to give that away. So this is a way to convince people. Now, that's the first part. So you have explained what the case is. Then you explain the comparisons. And again, I think this is also important, that you try to stay within debate as much as possible. So if some team says, we win this debate because we talk about the most people and we're having a really big harm, then use that weighing to explain why one team beats over another team. If you believe that that is, the most, accurate weighing that's been given in the debate. Don't insert yourself unnecessarily if there's already material in the debate that you can use to explain a call. But if you insert yourself, what you should do is explain why you insert yourself. So you can say, no one in this debate, or no one in this clash, explains to me why I should find X more important than Y. So now I, as a judge, need to insert myself to explain, or to think about why I think one team beats another team. Then you just justify inserting yourself. You justify that the people didn't do a good enough job, and therefore you need to do this. And then another thing is, you do it similarly for all teams. So it might be the case that one team has like 2 gaps, and one team has 1 gap in the argument. So you might be like, the reason why opening opposition is below opening government is because they have 2 gaps. It seems a bit unfair, because again, opening government might also have gaps. So they say, opening government has also this gap, but we think that it's only 1 gap, and they have an opening opposition has 2 gaps. So therefore, we need to insert ourselves less as a judge. So that's another thing, that you try to stay cognizant of the fact that, like, if you insert yourself, you should insert yourself equally in other teams if that is necessary. So just highlight that. Highlight if there are gaps. Highlight if there are still maybe some faults in other teams to your comparison. I think, again, this is just a fair thing to do. But this is, again, another convincing thing to do. If another team feels like another team also has a gap, if you point out, yes, they do have a gap, but it's not as big for these and these reasons, or it is not as important for these reasons, people are more likely to be convinced. Okay, if there's also a split, what you should do is you should explain the majority call first, and then the minority call. And then I think overall, you should try to at least understand why a panelist disagreed. So you could be like, hey, the panelists believe that this material is new enough for these and these reasons. And again, you can just stay to what specifically this person said during deliberation time, to just make sure you represent that opinion well and fairly. And then you can just say, but we as the majority felt that this was true as highlighted before, or because of these and these reasons. I think that's then the way that you deal with splits. If you are unable to explain it well, or you really don't understand it, then what you can just do is like, okay, you can ask our panelists or why, why they split, or why they had their opinions, if they want to disclose that. So yeah, I think that's also a good thing to do if you really don't understand why someone split, yeah. Now, giving and getting feedback. So how do you do this as a chair? What you should do is you should always give feedback chronologically. So if someone asks first, you should give them first. This is like first come, first serve. Then what you can just do is, if people just are, everyone just comes at the same time, or everyone raises their hands at the same time, what you can do is you can give the team who had the lowest position, give them feedback first, because they have the most kind of like to learn, or, they can use it the most, and therefore you should give the team the first. It's just like a courtesy thing. It's not really a hard given rule that I'm giving you things. So this is what I think is the most courteous thing to do. Then you should give the opportunity for them to also come during the lunch break or just online to you. If you do want your yourself or your own time, then just give them an opportunity to contact you online. Again, because I do think you should give feedback, and I think it is something that's important, especially as a chair, because you understand most likely best what happened in debate, or you also have a better oversight of what was happening during deliberation time or what you meant during an OA and that kind of stuff. So give people the opportunity to get feedback. Also, I think this is something that doesn't always happen, but it still can be quite useful. There are ways of it as a chair that you could just get feedback. So at the moment, you're giving a team feedback. You could just ask, was the OA clear? Or did you think I missed something? That kind of stuff. Just a short reflection. And then you can understand, oh yeah, maybe I didn't do enough rebuttal. Maybe I don't talk about rebuttal that much during my OAs. Let me think about that for the next OA. So I think that's why it's important to just ask if the OA was clear towards speakers. And also what you can do is afterwards for panelists. So especially during the deliberation time of the next round, you could just discuss with them, hey, did you think that we discussed speaks fairly? Or did you think you have enough time to give your opinion? Or do you think the OA was clear, was maybe too technical? Anything that you want to discuss. I don't, yeah. Again, I think that as a chair, you do sometimes also need to make sure that you are doing all your jobs. So like I said, deliberation time is just free practice pulling you aside, which is like time management, giving everyone the opportunity to speak and like coming to a conclusion, and making sure that your panelists feel feel like heard, or and they're like that you make sure that you have allocated the time fairly, all of that stuff, that actually happens, is an important thing. And I think that feedback is a good way to make sure that you don't drift maybe too much to one thing, that you don't give too much time and therefore you're overtime all the time, or that you are really good at time management, and come to the conclusion, but people really don't feel heard, and it don't feel like their opinion was respected, that kind of stuff. So as a chair, also still try to get feedback from time to time. It's really good to get other perspectives on how you judge. Okay, so that was mostly it. So I hope that this was clear. I explained to you how you should manage the debate, give some practical tips on how you can do time management and panel management, how I would structure things such as OAs and deliberation and that kind of stuff. If you have any questions or you want me to go into more detail in one of these aspects, then please just put a comment down below. I will read them and I will try to make a video that then correspondingly explains the stuff that you want me to hear. The next video is going to be an emotion analysis on narratives. So yeah, so I hope that's clear, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.